Oh, Cal, we are back.
We are back in the Gettable Death Star. Have a look at these
Season
lightsabers.
3.
As Yoda would say, back at the Gettable desk we are.
That is awful from you. There we go. We had Simpsons last year, we got Star Wars this year. Where do we get these lightsabers from, by the way?
Believe it or not, they are from an AFL player.
No.
Who's playing this weekend.
Oh.
A good friend of the show's.
There's actually quite a few AFL players that love Star Wars. But anyway, we are Gettable. We are sure you've been with us for the last 3 seasons. But if you haven't been, we are afl.com.au's one-stop shop for all the latest trade, draft, free agency and contract news. This is where all the biggest news in the AFL industry is broken. We've got guests on most weeks right the way through the year, whether or not that's draftees that are about to hit your AFL club, list bosses, recruiting managers, player agents. They all join us here at the Gettable desk. I'm Riley Beveridge. This is Twomey. Cal, you can also follow us on Instagram at any time. That is at Gettable with 2 T's. How's your summer been?
Terrific, Riley. Good to see you again. Haven't seen you since the last episode, so lots to catch up on, but we only do it on camera these days.
We certainly do. Watch much TV? I know you're a huge TV buff. Did you watch much over the summer?
Beast Games was my show of the summer.
Yep.
I loved Beast Games. That was the best game show I've seen. Cobra Kai, you know, I'm a big Cobra Kai fan. Watching Paradise at the moment.
Okay, that's good. I've been watching Severance, and then browsing through the streaming services, I flicked onto Stan the other day. I saw a little show called Invisible Boys. Have a look at this that I saw catch my eye.
Oh, no.
Now, this is Invisible Boys on Stan. It's a
good show.
Good show. Oh! Is that the Twomey at the Gettable desk midway through? I was stunned when I saw. When did that happen? Hollywood A-lister.
Well, yeah, I've been getting messages left, right and centre about that little appearance, so I'll see if we can do a cameo in season 2 as well, but good show. Catch it on Stan when you have some spare time.
You certainly can. All right, there are so many players that are going to be making news in the trade and free agency space this year, but none bigger than this year's cover story. And this week's cover story, it is Tom de Koning. There it is. Have a look at that, Cal.
It looks good, doesn't it? There's our magazine cover story. We're going to be doing this every week. You can look in there. Cal and Riley back with the big stories in 2025. Inside the big money chase for Chad Warner's signature. Why this St Kilda gun is the game's next $1 million man. And STK for TDK, the life-changing deal being considered by the Blue Stars. So we're going to go through all the big stories heading into this year. Let's start with Tom de Koning because we know the situation and consideration he's now taking in this St Kilda offer. So can St Kilda land its big fish, or will he give up a lot of money to remain at Carlton? The offer from the Blues is huge. 7 years at $1 million a season. The deal, my understanding, is worth around $7.5 million across its entirety. St Kilda offer is much more than that, millions more over that same 7-year term. So there's been so much discussion on this. He's seriously considering the Saints offer and weighing it up. This is much more live than many people think, and Carlton can't offer any more money.
No, they can't.
This is the offer, and it's a very good offer. It's one of the biggest in the club's history. It's one of the biggest that a ruckman's ever had. Think of Nick Nat and Brodie Grundy. You're probably two of the other ones who've hit that $1 million mark, but it still might not be enough. So he wants to stay in an ideal world, but he's clearly thinking very, very hard about the St Kilda offer and what a life changer it would be for him. So I think this one is absolutely a line ball call at the moment, and he's seriously considering the move.
I think it's a question of cash or culture, isn't it? I mean, I spoke to Michael Voss in pre-season, Blues coach, and he said they're backing in their culture as their ability to keep Tom de Koning. I think the reason for that is, as you mentioned, they don't have the cash to be able to match the bids that St Kilda's going to be able to offer him. So St Kilda, Sydney and Geelong among the teams that were interested in him in 2023. The Saints clearly going to be the standout option for him this year, and it's going to be fascinating to see which one this way plays out.
And if he stays at Carlton, it's a bursting cap, isn't it? Because basically it would mean you've got $6 million players in the group.
With Sam Walsh becoming a free agent in 2026 as well. That's the other
factor to consider. I think he's sort of at that level. Cripps, Curnow, Mackay, Walsh, Wiedering, de Koning potentially. So that is the cover story for this weekend, for this year, what TDK does. Now, linked with the TDK chase is the LDU chase.
Yes.
Which is obviously around Luke Davies-Uniacke. And this leads us to this equation that we want to just raise now. LDU and TDK. There it is. TDK, AND, LDU, FOR, STK, FOR, BIG, PAY. If you're listening to our podcast, you shouldn't be. You should be watching. But that spells TDK and LDU for St Kilda for big pay question mark. So, yeah, we're back with our background.
Yeah,
that's a start.
Starting again.
North put its cards on the table for Luke Davies-Uniacke, didn't it? And it did it in a very strong and aggressive manner. 7 years, about $1.3 million a season, a $9 million deal through to 2032, which would be the biggest deal in North Melbourne's history. here's the latest. Luke Davies-Uniacke is expected to stay at North Melbourne. He has been willing to wait and see how the season starts for his club. He's won 21 games out of 108 at his time at North Melbourne. So he wants to see progress on the field. But and if they started the season in shambolic fashion, then maybe that causes a rethink. But right here, right now, we'll get to that segment later on in the show. The expectation is Davies-Uniacke re-signs with North Melbourne. Yep. St Kilda has been in the chase as well for LDU, as everyone's aware. I understand they're offered to be at that 7-year mark as well, around the $1.5 million plus range. So that's about $11 million over the course of that offer, which is an extreme amount of money, but also that's what you have to pay to get in the conversation with these free agents. To combine that offer with the TDK offer...
Can they do both, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think they could do both.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Look, my feel for the Davies-Uniacke one, though, is that it's much more leaning towards stay than where things maybe sit with TDK.
You mentioned he'd want to see improvement. How crucial is their first 6 weeks going to be then?
Massive. Let's have a look at who they've got. So they've got the Bulldogs this weekend, which they're a chance in getting...
Injury-depleted Bulldogs.
Yeah, Melbourne, round 2, Adelaide at Adelaide Oval in round 3, Sydney at home, the Gold Coast in gather round, the Barossa, I think, and then Carlton in round 6.
Tough start.
Can they claim 2 or 3 wins out of that group? It is a tough start, so that's a challenge. But I think if we're going to see the steps of improvement, then it's going to come down to a little bit of that. But look, just on the St Kilda, there's a lot of discussion around their aggressiveness in this market. For me, I don't mind it because I think that the cap. The cap is their feather in their cap.
Yes.
Really. That's their one carrot at the moment.
And they have to spend.
And they have to spend. And they're signing up their younger players, obviously. And we saw Machito Owens ink his 4-year deal. Mateus Filippo's signed for a couple more years. So, they're signing up those guys longer term if they can. I think this is the way to get in the market. And they're disruptors, if nothing else.
Yeah.
And that'll essentially... push some things out down the track. And I think that Hawthorn model is one to follow as well. Go to the draft, and see if you can get some players down the track.
They're 2 of the biggest free agents in the game. One man who's not a free agent, but he is coming out of contract, and probably the biggest out-of-contract player in the league right now is Chad Warner at the Swans. You reported a couple of weeks ago that Sydney's presented a variety of contract options to Chad Warner, either the 2-year deal to free agency, longer term if he wants it. I'm sure if he wants to sign 8, they'd sign him up for 8. How do you see this one playing out?
Well, just on that 2-year offer, my understanding is the offer that Sydney has put to Chad Warner for that 2-year deal that would take him through to free agency is around $2.7 to $2.8 million across the entirety of that 2 years. So essentially that would make him the best paid player in the competition in 2026. So Sydney is not pulling up short here. They want their guy and they want him to know clearly that they want him. And look, of course you'd want this guy. I think we did the 25 on AFL.com.au. He was ranked just outside the top 10. He's every chance to be just inside the top 10 pretty soon, I think, in terms of the best players in the competition and how highly he's rated. So that offer is there. That's not to say that he isn't considering things very strongly around West Coast and Fremantle. He was keen on getting to Fremantle a few years ago in the trade period. That one dissipated pretty quickly at the time. West Coast is throwing everything at this as well. They have 2 first-round picks, Fremantle only 1. Obviously, they've got the 2 firsts in the next couple of years as well. So, look, he's not going to get shortchanged anywhere he goes. It's just a matter of if he does 2 more years on what will be one of the biggest deals in footy over the next couple of years and then tries to get through to free agency where he'll get even more money. He's not going to ever be short of cash, what's on the table for him. But that's an interesting one for sure.
Do you think he looks at the next 2 years at Sydney and thinks, I'm probably going to be a good chance of a flag if I stay? Or a better chance of a flag?
You have to weigh that up, don't you? I mean, Fremantle clearly is well in the field for a premiership as well, but West Coast much further away, clearly. But this is, a battle of 3 clubs, and all of the clubs have the means to get it done.
Well, one man who is going to be among the best players in the competition over the next couple of years is Harley Reed at West Coast. Still contracted until 2026, but we just know the attention on Harley's not going anywhere.
No, I mean, with Harley Reid, you buy the ticket, you get the ride, don't you? And that's what West Coast did in taking him at number 1. They knew that this was going to come throughout his whole career. Can't wait to see what he does this year. I mean, lots of talk around his pre-season. To me, he's a big game player, and when the footy's out, we'll see a fair bit of progress in him again. West Coast want these 2 to play together, clearly, Chad Warner and Harley Reid. it would be a mighty fearsome duo, wouldn't it, if they can get that across the line? And that's got to be West Coast sell in this. To Chad to play with Harley and to Harley to stay, that Chad could be coming.
Yeah.
So how did this two work? Clubs played around the edges with Harley Reed last year. I don't think anyone really made an advanced dip at him in his first year. I think that changes this year, though, because if it goes throughout this year and he's not extended beyond 2026, I think clubs will start to knock on the door properly and knock on the door of West Coast too to see if they would be open to doing anything and if he would be open to moving a year before he hits his contract year. So going to be a massive talking point throughout this year. And already he's had a good relationship with Andrew McQualter, the new coach at West Coast, and that'll be pivotal to it.
He's going to be one to watch over the next 12 months, and obviously beyond that his career, but the next 12 months I think is crucial in what he does next.
Yeah, I mean, and there's how many Victorian clubs are in it? Probably about 8.
Yeah.
In reality, I don't think Carlton would have the money at the moment, particularly if TDK stays, to be able to be in that conversation. North Melbourne won't be there. They had their chance in terms of a draft potential to grab him, and maybe a couple of others aren't. But like Essendon, Hawthorn, we know that Sam Mitchell sat at the wedding next to him. Geelong, I'm sure, will be all over. Collingwood, Melbourne, Richmond, St Kilda. So there's all of that. West Coast will put forward some new deals in coming weeks, I believe. I expect there'll be a range of options included in that. One of the ones that I'm looking for, and we haven't seen this too much in the game since Josh Kelly's deal a few years ago, but Josh Kelly did the 2 years and had a plus trigger of 8 years.
Yeah.
So basically that gives the player the ability to have his cake and eat it,
yeah.
essentially. If it was the Harley case, it'd be here's 2 years, potentially. Get through to your end of your 50 year, and then you decide whether you want to sign on long term. Because in that way, your money, the offer that you're getting from West Coast and also from everyone else, is going to stay there. So I think that's a watch to see how these flexible deals can circumnavigate some of those issues.
What about Oscar Allen? He's captain at the West Coast Eagles. He's a free agent this year. You've reported over the summer that he's already got plenty of interest, particularly from Brisbane, who we know
he's
are
spoken
looking
to Brisbane.
replace.
I stand by that. He's spoken to Brisbane, and Brisbane has spoken to him. I've got zero doubt about that. So believe what you want.
Refuted comments around that from Chris Fagan, but
that's okay.
Oscar Allen though, what happens here? Because he's a free agent. The Eagles wanted to get him tied down before he entered this free agency year. We reported that all the way through last season. Still hasn't happened though.
He wants a 6-year deal, is my understanding. And West Coast is offering him a medium to longer-term deal at the moment. The knee injury that he got at the start of last year has clearly been a factor within this. But it's unusual for a captain to be in this scenario, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's I wouldn't say it's odd, but it's just a little bit different for a captain to be heading into the start of his free agency year and to be the subject of so much.
I can't really remember many times in the past where it's happened. Patrick Cripps was one example when he came out of contract about 2022.
He took his time for that decision.
He did,
well.
yep.
Yeah, so it is a little bit unusual, but in saying that, he's got options there, and Brisbane has had the interest there. We've spoken about that. Hawthorn's been linked as well. He was at Tom Barrass's wedding too. There's another club.
Did he have a seat at the table though?
That's a good question. Well, Sam Mitchell said they were moved around. Spoke to a lot of people. There's another club I'll be keeping an eye on if this drags out, another club in Victoria, and that's Collingwood. Okay. There's interest there, and I think if this one gets to the middle part of the season and there's still no resolution, I think the Pies will be one to look at. I'm going to watch Collingwood on the weekend, as we all did. One game, I'm not getting carried away by that, but it does show that they don't have too many of those young, key developing, tall forwards today in the group. So ultimately, I think Oscar Allen probably wants to stay.
Yep.
And the deal, if I was calling it now, if I had to do a long-term forecast, probably stays. But he's going to have some options out there. If he left, though, compensation pick.
Yeah.
What's the better result for
Well,
West
yeah,
Coast?
that's the question that's going to be asked, isn't it? Because they could end up with top 5 picks as a result of that. What about Brandon Starcevich? You wrote last week around the interesting situation in Western Australia at the moment, given there's so many WA players that are out of contract or free agents. And Brandon Starcevich is another one. Premiership player at Brisbane. We know how great he was on grand final day, but he's a free agent, wants to play into the season before starting talks.
And wants to play in the midfield. So this is the watch on him. This is the interesting bit on him. He's got some interest in playing up the ground a little bit more, sees himself as more as a player than just what he is, which is a very good player. I think he'll be a restricted free agent. That's the expectation. So that'll change things a little bit. West Coast will be in for him. Fremantle have been keen as well in the past on him. Brisbane has tabled different offers to him. 2 years to get him through to unrestricted free agency, a longer term, 6 years, like Cam Rayner got at the end of last year as well. So decision time coming for Starcevich, but he's happy to let that play out a little bit further into the year. And the other bit with him is, I think there's some Victorian clubs who feel like he could be more open to a conversation. Right. Maybe you look at a Warner type, it's just WA or stay. I don't think it's maybe as much that way.
One to watch, but it's good they got Cam Rayner out of the way early, so it's their only priority now at the Lions. Matt Rowell, a neighbour across town at Gold Coast. Does he stay or go, Cal? Because you've reported that he met with 4 clubs over the summer.
Stay or go, yeah. I'll be leaning towards stay at the moment. I think if you asked that question 3 or 4 months ago, it's probably more looking towards go. The start of the season, again, if they can start ramping things up, I think it's much more likely that he stays.
They got a favourable draw early as well.
Collingwood, Essendon, Western Bulldogs and Geelong all met with him. As reported last week, he did enjoy his catch-up with Luke Beveridge. The question about the Dogs and Luke Beveridge is Luke Beveridge going to be there beyond 2025? But the Suns have asked about Sam de Koning as well. Sam de Koning, a little bit of club warfare there, I think. Never goes astray early in proceedings, but talks have started there with the Cats. So I think he'd stay there. Look, Matt Rowell is going to play this one out at his own time, but I probably see it more as stay than go at the moment. But he was a bit unsettled towards the end of last year, and that time is when he did catch up with those clubs. And look, we spoke about this on the show last year. Collingwood and Essendon being all over him.
He's going to be a watch throughout the next couple of months, as you mentioned. Nazai, Wanganeen-Milera, so much commentary around St Kilda and what they're bringing in, but they've got to keep one of their best as well. Yeah,
and this is one of the big stories of the year. There's no doubt about this. I wrote a couple of weeks ago around Nazai Wanganeen-Milera being expected to receive offers between 6 and 10 years to head back to South Australia. Can tell you Adelaide, in my understanding, has tabled a massive offer to get Wanganeen-Milera back home. My belief is that it's a lifer. So the type of deal that is the big one, up to 8 years plus.
Wow.
Last year, of course, around this time, the Crows had a 10-year deal on the table for Errol Goulden.
Yes, they did.
So at the same stage of his career, going into his 4th season. So Wanganeen-Milera hasn't been in a rush to re-sign. He has links to the Crows. Adelaide's new board member, James Gallagher, was actually the list boss at the Saints when he was drafted there. And he also has been a part of their Next Generation Academy player a little while ago before he was drafted. But I still have Port as the favourite if he was to move back to South Australia. He's really tight with Jason Horne-Francis and Jace Burgoyne. Spent a lot of time with those guys as part of the Indigenous All-Stars camp a few weeks ago. And his uncle, of course, is Gavin Wanganeen, that Port Adelaide great. So this isn't going to be a money thing, as you said. St Kilda would be able to match anything. He's happy at St Kilda, he likes St Kilda, he's a big part of Ross Lyon's future and direction there, but there's no doubt whatever he re-signs is going to hit the MDP. He's $1 million player club next. If you're a St Kilda player, and I think Marcus Windhager, who's also uncontracted this year, is in a similar boat, but is there any point in signing early this year? You're watching to see what plays out because you're thinking if TDK, if LDU, if they turn us down, we're every chance to get so much cash at the end of the year as a result of that. I mean, look at Harry Perryman last year. As a free agent's a little bit different, but he's the epitome of waiting it out. If the player is comfortable with the speculation, I think that we'll see more of that if you can back yourself in and know that you're going to get big deals. The other thing about Naz is that St Kilda plays in Adelaide 3 times in the first 5 weeks of the season, so you wonder what that'll... a lot of time back there. Exactly. What about Miles Bergman? One man who is in Adelaide at the moment at Port Adelaide, but does he want to be in Victoria, Cal, or will he sign through with the Power? Well, this is the bit about Port Adelaide looking at Wanganeen-Milera as well. They don't have a first-round pick. Now, Bergman could be their ticket to a first-round pick, but obviously the club loves him, and he's an underappreciated player, I think. He's a star already, and going to rise further this season. He's not getting into his talks until midway through the year. That's not unusual for him. We spoke about this on the show a couple of years ago when Collingwood came hard for him. He re-signed around June, July, around there. So that's been his considerate sort of calls with his contract over time. He's got to pull home. I think he ends his career in Victoria at some point, whether that's in 2 years' time, the end of this year, later down the track. But it's a huge decision for him, and he's going to have a lot of takers. As you said at the end of last year as well, there's going to be a lot of clubs watching his Port Adelaide teammate Kane Farrell, who is a free agent this year. Miles Bergman's year 6, so not a free agent just yet. What about Cozzy Pickett? The storylines about Cozzy Pickett won't go away. Signed through until 2027, but we know that he's got that pull back home to WA. Yeah, I remember we spoke about this in the trade period last year. He wanted to go to Fremantle up until that last day of the trade period. But also over the last few years, he has had interest in going to West Coast and Port Adelaide, and it has changed. He has a contract, as you said, for 2 more years. I think this year could be the one that something could happen and it could force the issue a little bit more. But Yeah, everyone says Fremantle, and that's real. They're interested in him. He's got real links there as well. He also was coached by Andrew McCalder last year at Melbourne, and he's got more links than anywhere at Melbourne.
Yeah.
So this is all part of the decision making, but they'd have to give up something pretty good. Brad Green said 3 first-round picks. I dare say it won't be required 3 first-round picks by the end of the year, but I like the flag.
You've got to be bold early. Put your flag in the ground. Could Luke Jackson be going the other way?
Yeah, I mean, Jackson has indicated to Melbourne teammates that he'd be keen to look at a move back.
Okay.
But he's also told Fremantle that he's all in and has no plans on going anywhere. So,
when's he contracted till? 2029?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's hard to see how it happens. And, you know, again, the season starts, Fremantle goes well, you'd expect. How does that all shape things up? Clearly there's different reasons and potential motives to get back to Melbourne, the city. But I think it's probably, if I was hedging the bet at the moment, I'd say unlikely. But like I said, there's been conversations both ways.
Sam Draper, another ruck. He's a free agent this year. I reckon you reported on this episode last year that he would have interest from Adelaide in about 24 months' time, and the time is coming now.
Yeah, I mean, that interest is real, and it's there. There's no doubt about that. He's happy in Melbourne. The parties have been talking about it, the deal, but nothing's set in stone. Essendon hasn't tabled a contract offer to him. They'll pick up talks in around round 6 to 8 after he sees how this partnership in the ruck goes with him and Nick Bryan. But Adelaide's still waiting there. They're clearly after ruck. He's got that South Australian pull, but ultimately I think he stays because he's enjoying living in Melbourne and gets on very well with Brad Scott, the Essendon coach, obviously. Marcus
Bontempelli. There is another captain who is a free agent this year. I think the widespread expectation with Marcus Bontempelli, though, is that he stays and re-signs at the Western.
What do you think? You wrote an interesting article about the double dip effect.
Yeah, well, in a sense, he was a free agent in 2021, and I reckon if he was a free agent in 2024, he would have signed this 8-9 year deal. He signed a 4-year deal in 2021, which takes him through to now, so he's in his second free agency stint. Could he double dip? Could he get his big payday in 2021 when he was one of the best players in the competition and get another big payday in 2025 when he remains one of the best players in the competition? And could it be the new frontier of contracts for free agents coming out of contract? I know there's a lot of clubs that are watching this deal very closely right now.
Yes, 100% on that. And also there's a lot of clubs who are just waiting to make the phone call to see, hey, Bont, what's going on with Bont? Where is this one sitting? Because we all believe that he stays. I think most clubs, in their heart of hearts, say he stays at the Western Bulldogs, where he's arguably their best player ever. But the longer this goes, and he's been pretty content in his media appearances, with which there's been a lot recently, to say, hey, I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to sort of play this out and focus on other things. He's not playing at the moment, and he won't be playing for a fair bit at the start of the season. So to me, it looked like a time to jump into those talks if you're ready to do that. Clearly, he's not. So, but that could happen pretty quickly too once it's done. It's almost like write down your number. Yeah. How many years do you want? Okay, deal. Done. So we'll make that work.
Braden Maynard, free agent at Collingwood. You called that they'd be interested in him late last year.
And there is. There is. And he spoke to the media a couple of weeks ago and said things were pretty close. I think probably got caught on the fly a little bit there. I don't think that's really as close as that. There's still a bit of way to go before there's a new deal locked in with Braden Maynard at Collingwood. Unrestricted free agent. Collingwood doesn't have a first round pick either. So if they're in for Matt Rowell, how do they maintain a draft presence or get a draft presence to at least be in the conversation to get a deal done? And can Maynard or would Maynard spit out another pick for them if he went to a club? North Melbourne, I think, is the watch there on Braden Maynard.
Jamari Ugle-Hagan, contract at the Bulldogs till 2026. We know he won't play in the early parts of the season. He's currently out of the side due to personal reasons. There's going to be interest in him from rival clubs this year.
Yeah, there is. And there already have clubs sort of watching this space. Brisbane has been linked as doing its work on Ugle-Hagan. 1 year to go on a lucrative contract that he only signed about this time last year. So 1 season to go. And that doesn't really hugely impact what any trade costs can be. So there's manoeuvring around that if he did move elsewhere, but there's certainly a discussion that'll be ongoing for sure.
Yes, all right, so they're the 15 names to watch in the trade and free agency space across the course of the 2025 season. Cal, what's your favourite segment on this show?
Askable. No, it's right here, right now.
Right here.
There it is.
Right here, right now. That's where we make predictions. Right here, right now, on the spot. You go first, Cal.
Sure?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. Well, right here, right now, list managers have their Google Pixels poised and they are absolutely ready to text and call agents around the competition, because round 1 is when the selection calls happen and everyone's dirty if they miss out on the best 23. So there's a lot of players who are going to be filthy this week, and that's where the list managers get their early conversation in and go, hey, why is he out of the team? What does he want? Could he be open to a chat at some point? So that's something to keep an eye on. I always love looking at the round 1 teams and just seeing where things sit.
All right. Right here, right now, I've got my eyes on what I'm calling the Allen key, Cal. Oscar Allen, and how it could spark a domino effect throughout the course of the year. So we mentioned it then. If West Coast did let him leave, they got a second top 5 pick. So they finish in the bottom 5, which everyone expects them to. Got a second top 5 pick. Sydney's going to be after one of them, or potentially both. Now, they've got one of the best academy players coming through this year in Max King. So where do you reckon he stands at the moment? Top 5, top 10?
Top 10 potentially.
Yeah, so they could have the potential of thinking, right, could we get a second first round pick in for Chad Warner, a second top 5 pick in, and then potentially go top 5 pick, Max King, rebuild on the run, we lose Warner, Allen's left, we benefit as a result of this whole domino effect that's sparked as a result of the Oscar Allen decision. It has implications for Harley Reed, has implications for a lot of players around the competition, I reckon.
Would they put their hand up for Harley Reid and get in that conversation if Chad Warner leaves? You'd have to sort of make the call at some point if that's the case and it goes that way and Warner does depart. You're right though, because the pick that West Coast could get is a big part of that. But also they've got a couple of other academy boys who are looking like first round picks too. All right here, right now, just need to drop this. Can you just hold that for a second?
Yes, I can.
Right here, right now, I've got a new idea for a concept at a club. So all throughout last year I said Hawthorn needs to make wizard hats.
Oh, they've done it.
Yeah, they did that. Of course they did. Of course they did. I think they'll be on show on Friday night, I reckon.
You getting a commission?
You reckon? and right here, right now, I've got a new idea for Essendon to go wacko for Kako. So every time he kicks a goal, particularly at Marvel Stadium or Essendon home games, they need wacko for Kako on the scoreboard, and then they need to get their Kako clappers. So Kako clappers need to be everywhere. Yeah, exactly. Kako clappers, bang, 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 bang. Every time Isaac kicks a goal, make the bays of Marvel Stadium and the MCG rise up. So it's time to go wacko for Kako. Over to you, Essendon.
I'll tell you what, I love the wizard hats. If that happens, I promise you I'll never going to another Essendon game ever again, because those things are very annoying. Cal, it's been a great first episode back. There's your hat. It's on. Brilliant from you, Cal. All right, we will see you all next week. Don't forget, all of the latest trade news comes in on Gettable. All the latest contract news comes on Inside Trading. Keep clicking back to afl.com.au for that. Cal's got his cap on. We'll see you next week.